The big story out of Wolves this week, Gary, is that Coady and Matt Doherty have signed new contracts till 2023. The word on the street seems to be 50 grand a week for Matt Doherty, which is, I would say at this stage, quite reasonable, considering the season that he's had. I don't know, with the way contracts go, maybe this doesn't make any difference in terms of whether he stays at the club or goes, or with it being, 3 months from the end of the season, would that suggest that there's no chance he would leave in the summer?
Well, listen, it depends what the offer is. If someone comes in for him who's identified, as you quite rightly said, how consistent he's been in the Premier League, that he's a goal-scoring threat, even from right full-back. But congratulations to him and to Coady in terms of signing that contract, because what it gives you is peace of mind more than anything. It allows him now just to concentrate solely on football. And certainly you have to say that under Nuno, both of them have gone to a completely different level that you probably, in all honesty, wouldn't have expected them to. So it just shows his coaching capabilities, but ultimately shows you that they've been able to show just how good they can be within a framework of a team that suits them both. And certainly that 5 at the back system does exactly that.
I guess that is always the key for a player in Matt Doherty's position, is finding a team with the framework that gets the very best out of you. And because Wolves play with the 3 at the back and he gets to operate in that wing-back position, he looks so comfortable there. And it was linked with Tottenham. Listen, Maurizio Pochettino, I'm sure, would know how to get the best out of them as well. And look at the way they played with 3 at the back in the Champions League during the week. Can you tell from Matt Doherty whether he'd be ready for that step up, whether he'd be ready for a top 6 team, or do you feel it might be a bit of a challenge for him if he did get that sort of move?
Well, it's difficult to say, really, because I think ultimately, and he was quite vocal about this, Doherty, initially coming into the Premier League, he said he was a blur. He was so quick compared to the Championship. But then you question whether or not can he adapt, and he has done, so he can go to another level. And it's very difficult to predict. Obviously, there's people in football, that's their skill set in terms of scouting, whether or not they can cope and go to that next level. If Pochettino has seen something in him, as the speculation suggests, then I wouldn't bet against his knowledge as such. But there's no doubt in terms of how Wolves play. And you think about Matt Doherty, in terms of the distance that he covers, the quality that he gives you, the very fact he does even defend that back post as well, suggests he covers the whole of that right-hand side in a way that very few wing-backs do. You either get the essence of them going forward and they're great at that, not particularly good defensively. I think you could argue that about Cyrus Christie as such, but he seems to be able to do both, and he seems to be able to do it well. So, listen, he's in a great period of his career. He's signed that contract, and I can't tell you just how much for peace of mind that will give him, because he'll be able to make plans for his future, but ultimately just concentrate solely now on his football. Now, you may well say there's speculation, will it affect him? But it's positive speculation. It's far better than the speculation that he would have had a couple of seasons ago in terms of would he even stay at Wolves? Would he have to drop down the leagues and get his game that way? But I've been really impressed with his Premier League career so far. It's
going to be an interesting summer at Wolves. You're sort of conflicted when you look at Wolves, because in a way it feels like a bit of a fairy tale the way they've come back over the last couple of seasons, but then at the same time you look a bit deeper and George Mendes' influence.
Yeah, of course.
But then again, you look at the style of football they play on the pitch, and it's one of the most attractive styles of anybody there. It'll be interesting to see whether the plan is to try and kick on and move into a challenging position for the top 4, to keep Ruben Neves, to keep Diogo Jota, to keep Matt Doherty, or whether there's a grander plan to cash in on these players for the benefit of the agent.
Oh no, I wouldn't think that the agent. Listen, who can predict what an agent's thinking? I think ultimately the money is their motivation all the time. But there is a plan in place, and it's a very, very detailed, very organised one at Wolves in terms of the very fact that they said they get up into the Premier League, they consolidate. But within 7 years, they're looking to challenge for Champions League places. Now, if you think about the owners, you think the very fact that they've been able to entice those type of players, their manager, into the Championship. I mean, they had players in the Championship who were Champions League quality, to be perfectly honest, in terms of playing for those Portuguese sides. So with that agent, they've got a market that very few clubs who come up from the Championship would have. So it does bode well. It's exciting times, and it's an incredible turnaround. I mean, when I initially went to Wolves under Mick McCarthy, Glenn Hoddle walked away because he felt that the club lacked ambition. Turned up that first day of training, I think we only had 7 first-team players. Mick done an incredible job. But I think they've gone to a completely different level now. The very fact Mick got them into the Premier League and they were able to consolidate a little bit, improve the stadium. But these new owners, this new manager, this quality of player now is something that Wolves have never seen before.
Which is your pick of those Portuguese players, or those players that have come into the club? Because Ruben Neves seems to get most of the plaudits, and in certain games he's absolutely run the show, particularly when they're dominating possession. I've heard a lot of people say actually that Jota is the one who really is has the potential to go on and bring it to another level.
Listen, I think they're fabulous players, and Ruben Neves, more than anything, at his age, with that maturity that he had, he was captain of his club team before he came to Wolves. I could understand the type of speculation linking him to that defensive role that Manchester City need to find a replacement for Fernandinho. But ultimately, if you're telling me who is the key player, it's João Moutinho. And you talk to any Wolves fans now, Neves is great, but it's Moutinho who dominates the game, who gives him, that young midfielder, a platform. So they have real players. I think they've got an opportunity now to scout leagues and entice players from them to Wolves with the financial muscle of the Premier League and the kudos that you have attached to it. But the very fact that they could get those players to get them to play in the English Championship shows you that they've been sold a dream. They've been sold a project that they believe that they will be challenging, not just at the top of the Premier League, but ultimately in Champions League football within the next few years. And that's a bold statement, but they're on the right path.
Yeah, it's a shame in many ways we had to wait so long to see João Moutinho, because he seems to have been consistently linked with a move to the Premier League for the past decade, and now he's in his 30s by the time he's finally arrived, but clearly still has the talent, still has that range of passing that's been there throughout his career.
Oh, listen, he's fabulous. We've seen it in commentary so often. You know, the likes of that Sterling win against Tottenham away from home. They showed that they can win. And this is what's so impressive about this Wolves team. And the philosophy of Nuno is not ultimately just one way of playing. You're quite right to identify it's an attractive way of playing, but they can switch it up. They can play on the front foot, dominate possession, but they can also play with the low block and counter-attack. We've seen them do it brilliantly earlier in the season against Manchester City, but we've seen them do it to devastating effect to beat Tottenham at Wembley.
Yeah, it's funny because it'd be interesting to look into that, because as you say, they're sort of renowned now for possession-based football, but I bet you they play more long balls than any other team in the Premier League, with that diagonal from centre-back up to either Costa or Doherty. You see it every game. They play 20 of them a match, and teams somehow still don't seem to have copped onto it.
They do, and it's not just the outside of those back three. It's Conor Coady stepping into midfield. And if you'd have said to me, or identified, having seen Conor Coady making his way at Sheffield United initially, then going to Wolves, is he a centre-back who can cope in the Premier League? Not for one moment would I have said that. I think even Jamie Carragher, who knew him as a young player at Liverpool, has been very surprised. But and also we say about Matt Doherty, they're playing at a level now that you just would not have predicted. And massive credit to them as players, of course it is, but it's all within that framework that Nuno has identified. These have players and certain skill sets. Yeah, they have deficiencies in their game, but they're protected. Now, listen, you can see the likes of Barcelona with centre-halves like Mascherano at times where we thought if you can get at him, but because the system's so good, because they retain possession so good, you can't. And I think to a lesser extent, you can say that about some of those Wolves players.